Hello there everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, internal medicine physician. Could COVID-19 have come from a lab all along? Now the very fact that I'm even talking about this is truly unbelievable. Think about this as well. Had I even tried to upload this video a few months ago, it likely wouldn't have been uploaded, or if it had, would have likely been removed by the fact checkers very quickly. And that is something to really think about. The idea now is gaining more and more traction and becoming more widespread. And actually, a couple of weeks ago only, I talked to a physician while I was at work who is highly specialized. She actually runs her own lab. And she told me that from the beginning of this pandemic, she thought that the virus was exhibiting some suspicious features that made her think it was man-made, including in the sequencing and how quickly it was being transmitted human to human. I myself, I will admit, thought that it had originated in a wet market, the commonly held view last year. I even wrote about it at the time. And actually, when you look at the conditions in these wet markets, the images and videos are very difficult to look at online. They are absolutely atrocious. They are a disgrace. But if you look at those images, it's not a big stretch to see how in those squalid conditions, viruses could potentially jump from animals to humans. Nevertheless, the lab leak theory is gaining more and more traction now. Many of our world leaders are talking about it. And recently, the British spy agencies said that this deserved serious investigations, MI5 and MI6. And all respect to the American intelligence agencies, I think they are awesome, but few could beat the British spy agencies. Think James Bond, names Bond, James Bond. But all of these real-life James Bonds running around, when they say something needs to be explored, you should explore it. And quite often there's no smoke without fire. I'm not going to get into any individuals in this video. I know a lot has been talked about with regards to Dr. Fauci. I will let that story play out. I'm not going to talk about gain-of-function research, and I'm certainly not going to talk about the World Health Organization, who have completely lost all respect in my eyes over the last year. I used to really think highly of them and quoted them frequently in my talks. And over the last year, something very, very strange has happened with the World Health Organization as well. And you can go back and look at some of the information they were putting out, including saying very early on in the pandemic and insisting that there was no evidence that COVID spread human to human. I want to focus here on three entities that should apologize ASAP if, and this is still a big if because it's under investigation, but if this lab leak theory is found out to be true, these three entities should apologize as soon as possible, or stat, as we say in medicine. Number one, the Chinese government. Now, China is a country which has grown enormously in power and influence over the last 20 to 30 years. And the Chinese government is not to be confused with the Chinese people. I actually think Chinese people are among the most hardworking, disciplined, and ambitious you could ever meet, all traits to be admired. Many of my best friends are actually of Chinese descent. This issue is with the Chinese government, not the people. Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government apart from all others. And it's sad that it's 2021, but China is an authoritarian regime that routinely suppresses its people. The people over there don't have free speech. And I know we complain a lot in the West, and it's right to always be vigilant. But if we want to see a real repressive regime, go somewhere like China, where the press is not free and you certainly can't speak up and say things that are on your mind without fear of intimidation and frequently arrest. And you should read about, you may have already heard, what happened to the doctors over there who first raised alarm in Wuhan when they were seeing COVID-19. They were terribly treated by the local authorities. So what I'm about to say, I may well kiss goodbye to any future visits to China. It's a shame. I've actually visited Hong Kong before, but Beijing and the Great Wall of China were on my bucket list. But I'd probably be arrested now if I ever show up there. But China, if the lab leak theory ends up being true, you owe the world a big apology if this is a man-made virus, even more so than if it originated accidentally at a wet market. Number two, the media. Right from the beginning, when this theory was first put forward, the media completely promoted it as false and ridiculed it. And this immediately stifled any open debate, not only from journalists, but also from scientists and people in medicine as well. And the basis of the Western model of democracy is a free and vibrant press, where these things are discussed openly, where you have investigative journalists who want to get to the bottom of things, i.e. get to the truth. And I really do believe that if the lab leak theory is found out to be true, it is time for some serious self-reflection from those journalists and from the media in general. If you want to be a political activist or agenda-driven as a journalist, there are plenty of countries that would love to have you, including China, countries in the Middle East, Russia, or even Belarus, with what's happened there recently. But media, you should seriously think about your model of open debate and honesty if the lab leak theory is proved true in the end. Number 3, big tech. Now, I know a lot of people have strong feelings about big tech, but let's think about what's gone on over the last 16 months or so. Big technology companies were actively blocking any discussion about the COVID lab leak. They were not just discouraging or putting fact checks at the bottom, but they were actively blocking this discussion. This was happening on various social media channels. And even now, Wikipedia has got this theory under COVID misinformation when it's being investigated by high authorities in several Western countries. And think about this. We in Western countries, within our own countries, will investigate almost any institution or person, as we should, who is suspected of wrongdoing. Everything is open and talked about. Why would we be going to these lengths to protect what, after all, many see as a political adversary? I mean, it doesn't quite make sense, does it, that we would go that far? So big technology really has some explaining to do here, because discouraging talk about something or putting warnings at the bottom is one thing, but to be actively blocking posts that discuss things which now, several months or over a year later, end up being investigated as potentially true is truly shocking. Big technology, what have you done here, and why were you going to these extreme lengths to block any discussion about this possibility that COVID-19 was leaked from a lab? So everyone, the truth nearly always comes out in the end, and if the COVID-19 lab leak theory ends up being proved true, those 3 entities owe the world a huge apology and some serious self-reflection. In fact, many people would say, even if the theory isn't true, those 3 entities still owe the world an apology for their lack of openness, honesty, and transparency. Let me know what you think down below. Only 2 possible theories as to how the virus originated, either zoonotic transmission in a wet market or in a lab. Thanks everyone for listening. Dr. Suneel Dhand. Follow me on YouTube and Facebook, MedStoic Lifestyle Medicine. Have a good weekend.